Nietzsche's quote, "Woman is God's second mistake," strikes like a lightning bolt to the heart. It doesn't just offend, it devastates. This single sentence, heavy as a stone cast into the quiet waters of modern thought, is for many a shocking and offensive testament to ingrained misogyny. Yet long before Nietzsche uttered this harsh truth, his teacher, the man who taught him to stare directly into life's gaping abyss, had already laid the philosophical groundwork for this darkness. That man was Arthur Schopenhauer. Today we embark on one of the most challenging and perhaps most essential journeys. We will delve into the mind of one of history's darkest, most razor-sharp, and unsparingly honest philosophers. Our goal is to comprehend one of his most scandalous convictions. What did Schopenhauer truly think of women? Let me be direct. This will not be easy to hear. Schopenhauer's words offer no warmth. They burn with a bitter cold. He has been rightly called a misogynist. And perhaps he was. But here, as in any true philosophy, we are not content with superficial definitions. We aim deeper, asking agonizing questions. What did he truly intend to convey to us? Why did he express his thoughts in precisely this way? For perhaps beneath this bitterness lies a truth so painful that we avoid direct confrontation, hiding behind the word hatred rather than acknowledging its validity. We are not here to whitewash Schopenhauer. Our objective is far more complex and noble: to understand him, to explore his worldview not as a fit of malice, but as the meticulous diagnosis of a man convinced he had discovered a fatal illness, afflicting the very foundation of human existence. And to do this, we must look into our own souls and honestly ask ourselves, do his words, even the most caustic, not resonate with feelings we have experienced but feared to voice? To understand why Schopenhauer said what he did about women, we must delve into the core of his philosophy. He saw no divine providence, no harmony, not even elementary logic in the universe. Instead, he believed it was governed by a blind, relentless force, a force devoid of all logic, all compassion, all predestination. A force obsessed with but one desire: to exist, to expand, and to endlessly repeat itself in the cycle of birth, pain, and death. Schopenhauer named this force the will to life. Everything we see around us, animals, humans, nature itself, is merely a thin veil, a mask concealing this all-consuming will. And we, alas, are not free in our decisions. We are not wise arbiters of our own destiny, nor autonomous minds. We are puppets dutifully dancing to the tune of this very will. Our passions, our dreams, our obsessions, they are not entirely our own. They are merely instruments that the will cynically employs to perpetuate its vicious cycle. The will has but one all-consuming goal: to preserve life at any cost. For Schopenhauer, this life in which we find ourselves trapped is nothing but an endless succession of suffering. He stated, "Life is like a pendulum, swinging endlessly between agonizing pain and oppressive boredom. We suffer, yearning for what we lack. But even when we finally attain what we desire, joy proves to be only a fleeting mirage. Soon we are consumed by emptiness, restlessness, and then we crave something new, and the vicious cycle of pain begins anew. We are like wretched beggars to whom a crust is thrown today, only for them to writhe in hunger again tomorrow. Happiness, merely a deceptive mirage, shimmering in the boundless desert of suffering." With such a grim, uncompromising perspective, Schopenhauer addresses humanity, drawing a sharp, almost cruel distinction between men and women. In his view, they are not merely two sides of the same coin, but two entirely different instruments in the hands of a relentless will, striving solely for one goal: biological survival. In his essay On Women, he writes things that still make one's heart clench today, about female illogicality, the power of fleeting instincts, the absence of a deep sense of justice, and a propensity for deception. The words are caustic, like a whip. Yet in his vision, there is no hint of hatred, only a cold, sobering statement of fact. These assertions are a direct deduction from his metaphysical logic, from his conviction about how life is structured and how this blind, all-consuming will operates. For him, woman is the purest, most perfect embodiment of the will to life. She is the guardian of the human species. Every instinct, every thought, her very being, all are subordinate to a single goal: biological continuation, passing the baton of life forward into the future. And in this, according to Schopenhauer, lies her greatest strength and, simultaneously, her tragedy. When he asserts that woman lives, confined within the embrace of the present, he is by no means implying intellectual inadequacy. He emphasizes that her purpose is to preserve and nurture life here and now. Her genius lies not in detached reflections, but in infallible instinct. Her mind is firmly rooted in the material world, in the steadfastness of the home, in the care of offspring, in the ability to survive. She cannot afford to get lost in the labyrinths of lofty ideals and abstract truths, for her mission is inextricably linked to life itself. She does not strive for truth or beauty in the philosophical sense of the word. Her goal is to ensure safety and continuity for herself and her children. And as Schopenhauer insisted, this is not a moral judgment, but merely a natural function prescribed by the will itself. In contrast, man is an anomaly, a remarkable opportunity to rebel against this will. While woman is designed for unconditional service to the species, man possesses a strange ability to transcend this biological program. Man is capable of sacrificing his well-being, his joy, and even his life for something that holds no value for survival. He is willing to die for something ephemeral like honor, risking falling on the battlefield. He might dedicate decades to building a cathedral, knowing he will never see it completed. He could lose his sanity, obsessed with a mathematical problem, blinded by a vision, tormented by a symphony that no one needs. It is in these moments of creativity, scientific inquiry, and selfless service, moments when man, according to Schopenhauer, rebels against the will, ceases to be a slave to nature, and strives for something higher, that the source of his tragedy lies. The selfless pursuit of eternal truths, a passionate love for knowledge, the refusal to follow the call of instinct. These are the roots of Schopenhauer's bitterness. He sees in woman a symbol of life's affirmation, but for him, life is not a blessing but a heavy burden. And only in man's creative fervor does he discern a rare chance to say no to life, to reject the will through art and self-denial. Woman is the embodiment of common sense, the preserver of the species. Man, in his highest transcendence, is sacred madness, the only being daring enough to turn his back on nature itself. This perspective grows even darker when it comes to love. For Schopenhauer, romantic love is nature's most insidious deception, a cunning trick played by the will to life. In his essay on the metaphysics of sexual love, he asserts that when a man truly falls in love, he is not making a choice. Love is merely a carefully orchestrated biological ploy, masking a ruthless objective: efficient procreation. Through the prism of romance, soulmates, and poetry, the harsh drama of instincts emerges. A man guided by his subconscious is drawn to youth, health, and symmetry, not to ephemeral beauty, but to signs indicating the ability to produce healthy offspring. A woman, conversely, seeks strength, intellect, status, and security in a man, support and protection during the vulnerable years of motherhood. What we loftily call love is, in essence, a genetic strategy, bringing together individuals who, under different circumstances, would remain indifferent or even hostile to each other. Passion, Schopenhauer contended, is merely a mirage, dissipating the moment the will achieves its objective. procreation. And then love transforms into a cynical transaction. At this point, Schopenhauer's view of women becomes not just painful, but agonizingly familiar to many men. In his conception, women instinctively recognize their power over men, rooted in sexual desire, and use it mercilessly. Charm, tenderness, flirtation, an entire arsenal of feminine ploys, sometimes even feigned vulnerability, like a biological weapon designed to strike down and attract the most worthy provider and protector. Schopenhauer caustically notes, "A woman who marries for love is, in reality, entering into a lifelong maintenance contract. A man blinded by love writes a blank check to the species without looking." It sounds offensive, perhaps overly simplistic, but before we condemn his works, let us look honestly around us. Have we not observed similar patterns in our own lives, in the fates of our friends? Have we not seen talented, hopeful men yielding to sudden passion, drastically alter their lives, abandon ambitions, squander precious time, energy, and resources on feelings they perceived as all-consuming? In their eyes, a fire burned, and in their future, there was only her. And have we not witnessed how, after marriage, after children were born, relationships underwent a metamorphosis, transforming from a blazing romance into a pragmatic union where routine, survival, and maintaining order played the primary roles? Schopenhauer gives this sensation a name and constructs an entire philosophical system around it. The feeling of being trapped, of falling into cunningly laid nets, fragrant with the scent of love, whose true purpose only reveals itself over time. The beautiful cage snaps shut, and now you are an unwilling prisoner. But to stop there would be too superficial. To truly grasp the depth of this philosophy, one must look into the heart of Arthur Schopenhauer's own life. For ideas do not arise in a vacuum. They sprout from the seeds of experience, character, and most often from the bitter soil of pain. Schopenhauer's work is not merely a collection of theories. It is a cry of the soul transformed into a philosophical treatise. And the root of this pain traces back to the first and most influential woman in his life, his mother, Johanna Schopenhauer. Johanna was no ordinary woman of her era. A brilliant, successful novelist, she shone in the highest circles of society. After her husband's tragic, probable death, she moved to Beaconwood and opened one of the most prestigious literary salons, Ethelgard. Independent, charismatic, and cosmopolitan, she drew admiring gazes. Yet for her son, Arthur, she remained an iceberg, detached, emotionally unavailable. Their relationship devolved into an endless emotional war. She saw him as melancholic, arrogant, and prone to excessive dramatization. He, in turn, saw her as vain, superficial, and narcissistic. Their letters, like poisoned arrows, were pierced with accusations and contempt. Therefore, when Schopenhauer's pen, as if poisoned, writes lines about women's inability to be objective, their selfish focus on the personal, their vanity and superficiality, it seems as though Johanna's ghost guides his hand, seeking revenge for years of loneliness. His misogyny is not merely a philosophical thesis. It is the bleeding wound of a child deprived of maternal love. This wound, festering, transformed into a theory encompassing not only his mother, but half of humanity. It is the desperate attempt of a tormented man to convince himself and others that his pain is not a personal tragedy, but a universal law. In every caustic phrase, raw pain shines through, as if he is crying into the void, hoping to be heard and understood. Recognizing this does not excuse his angry words, but it grants them tragic depth. It allows us to see, behind the mask of a philosophical monster, a vulnerable man seeking solace in his theories. And it is this that leads us to one of his deepest insights. Throughout all his work, like a dark thread, runs the suggestion that Schopenhauer did not merely hate women. On a deeper level, he feared them. He feared them because he saw in them the most powerful force, the embodiment of what he despised most, the blind, insatiable will to life. In their energy, in their capacity for creation and destruction, he saw a threat to his meticulously constructed world of rationality and pessimism. This fear, like a dark shadow, haunted him throughout his life, poisoning his thoughts and defining his attitude toward women. He saw in them something more than mere beauty, a subtle, irrational, and utterly uncontrollable force, a power that ensnares men through insatiable desire. A man might erect impregnable fortresses of logic, chain himself with strict self-discipline, desperately trying to break free through reason and art. But let her appear, the embodiment of beauty, the alluring promise of pleasure, the seductive melody of life itself. And this entire meticulously constructed edifice of reason begins to treacherously tremble, crumbling like a house of cards. The philosopher who proudly strode the path of knowledge is once again cast down to the level of an animal, guided solely by instincts. In Schopenhauer's eyes, a woman's strength lies not in physical might or sharpness of argument. No, it is something far more ancient, primal, and therefore immeasurably more dangerous. The power of temptation, the cunning ability to lead even the most steadfast man astray, to make him betray his highest ideals for a fleeting, deceptive moment of pleasure, for the ghostly illusion of romantic unity. For him, she is the smiling, cunning face of the biological prison, and he, a man who dedicated his life to the agonizing search for the key to escape, saw in her his most formidable, relentless guard. In her eyes, the reflection of his defeat. It is here in this cruel, piercing warning about the all-consuming power of desire that the old pessimist from Stonehaven, despite all his bitterness and enduring pain, speaks with a voice that still resonates chillingly true. For if we cast aside hypocrisy and look honestly around, Schopenhauer's warning is not a dusty relic of the 19th century, but a drama that unfolds before our eyes every single day. And in this drama, alas, the same tragic ending too often repeats. A man driven by purpose, fueled by a mission, pulsates with directed and powerful energy. Be it a career, creative pursuits, spiritual quests, or his destiny in this world. This is his compass, his lighthouse in the darkness. But how often do we witness the tragedy? A man blinded by passion casts everything aside. The woman becomes the center of his universe, eclipsing goals, dreams, hobbies, even friends. Everything is sacrificed on the altar of love. He ceases to be the captain, transforming into a passenger on his own ship of life. And here it is, the cruel irony of fate. By abandoning his path, his purpose, he also loses what made him so attractive. His independence, his insatiable hunger for more, that very masculine energy that once drew her to him like a magnet. All of it fades. He becomes needy, dependent, revolving around another's axis, and the very woman for whom he sacrificed everything begins to lose respect for him. Because deep down, a woman cannot respect a man who has lost his own center, his inner strength. Love intended to build consumes him. The connection meant to strengthen weakens. So, Schopenhauer, like a wise elder, whispers a final warning to us, stripped of its former fury, yet crystal clear like a strategy on life's chessboard. Do not let yourself be intoxicated by the sweet haze of desire. Do not blindly trust your most ardent feelings as if they were a compass in a storm. Look beyond the mask of a beautiful face, beyond the enchanting smile, beyond the promises of paradise. Pause for a moment and ask yourself in silence, is this feeling born within me? Is this the choice of a free individual or merely an echo of the species' voice? Is the blind will not using me as a puppet in its endless game, caring nothing for my happiness, my purpose, or my soul? This is not a call to icy insensitivity. It is not about forever locking the gates of the heart to love. It is about entering its sacred waters with wide open eyes. It is about recognizing the duality of our nature. Within us reside two powerful forces. One is the individual, yearning for meaning, growth, mastery, like a mountaineer conquering a peak. The other is the beast, programmed only for procreation, guided by instincts like a blind leader. The wise person is not one who denies their animal nature, but one who knows it intimately, treats it with respect, yet does not allow it to dictate their will. A man who understands himself, his mission, a man who stands firm on his path, is capable of loving deeply and sincerely, not out of agonizing need, but from the overflowing fullness of his being. He sees in woman a fellow traveler on life's journey, not a predetermined destiny. He warmly opens the doors to his world, but he will never abandon the confines of his own to dissolve into her reality. His love is a conscious act of will, not blind submission to nature's call. He firmly knows his true value lies not in her approval or affection, but in his own integrity, in his unwavering fidelity to himself. Schopenhauer offers us a bitter pill, not easy to swallow, but sometimes the most bitter medicines heal the deepest wounds of the soul. His words, like an icy shower, force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Even our most elevated feelings might be nothing more than cunning biological ploys. He pushes us to the audacious thought of questioning our heart's most intimate impulses and points the way to achieving a higher freedom from the slavery of our own instincts. Of course, we are not obliged to unconditionally accept his grim verdict that life is pure. Suffering and denial is the only escape. But we are simply obligated to heed his warning, his passionate plea, to build within ourselves such a powerful core, such a clear understanding of our mission, and such unshakable self-respect that no storm of passions can knock us off our chosen path. The path of life is rarely strewn with roses. True greatness is forged in the crucible of struggle, a struggle against one's own will, a struggle for a high purpose that transcends momentary passions. It is this struggle that distinguishes those who do not succumb to the temptations of fleeting pleasures and superficial desires. Like artists, philosophers, and selfless heroes, they carve their path toward a richer and more meaningful life, even if it requires renunciation of life's very essence. Schopenhauer, like a wise guide, points out the arduousness of this path, but also provides a map. He urges us to look deep within ourselves, to comprehend our passions and aspirations, and to honestly answer the question, are we masters of our own will, or merely puppets pulled by the invisible strings of biological impulses? True freedom, according to Schopenhauer, is the ability to say a firm no to one's will, to transcend biological urges, and to discover one's own unique path. In the daily rush, we often fall into the trap of craving recognition, chasing instant pleasures, and desperately needing external approval. Schopenhauer urges us to pause and reflect. Is this truly our choice, or are we simply drifting along, obediently following what society, nature, or the blind will dictates to us? It's easy to fall into the trap of others' expectations, to live for others, adapting to social norms or partners' desires. But Schopenhauer calls us to stop, look within, and ask, what do I truly want? He implores us to recognize the power of choice, to take the reins of our lives into our own hands, rather than drifting along, driven by circumstances. Schopenhauer warns us against the dangerous allure of temptation, stemming not only from women but from everything that beckons with promises of instant gratification. Money, power, social recognition, all are merely guises of temptation, distracting us from our deeper, true purpose. They seem to whisper of quick satisfaction, yet simultaneously lead us further away from what truly matters. Temptation in all its manifestations is the captivating face of the will, luring us into an endless cycle of desires and fleeting pleasures. True freedom, therefore, lies in the ability to see beyond these illusions to their true essence, to recognize the deception, and to follow the path that genuinely aligns with our destiny. Schopenhauer, a visionary of a somber worldview, nonetheless offers us the keys to liberation from the shackles of biological determinism. He reveals a path leading to freedom of choice, a path where reason, purposefulness, and self-knowledge become our guides. And here it is, the greatest challenge, not merely to resist life's temptations, but to find the strength to forge one's own way, unyielding to the dictates of fleeting desires and external expectations. This path is often solitary, but it is the only true one if we aspire to an authentic and meaningful existence. In the daily hustle, we relentlessly battle between fleeting whims and deeper purpose. Schopenhauer reminds us, the will is that mighty force that propels us forward, yet simultaneously traps us in an endless cycle of dissatisfaction. Humanity invariably strives for what appears to be quick gratification, fleeting pleasures, a craving for recognition, illusory security. But any of these satisfactions are merely ephemeral visions, like a mirage in the boundless desert of existence. Schopenhauer saw the key to liberation not in denying our nature, but in profoundly understanding it, acknowledging that our desires are often dictated not by us, but by a powerful external biological force, grants us the chance to break free from its sway. Instead of rushing madly through life, we can take the reins into our own hands and decide what we truly crave. Freedom is not the suppression of desires, but the ability to consciously choose which desires are worth pursuing and which to release. Without regret. This path to self-knowledge and control requires us to cast aside all superficiality and focus on what is truly important. Schopenhauer did not advocate for asceticism and self-denial. He spoke of a life filled with clarity and purpose. Only by grasping our deepest motives can we forge a path that truly reflects our values and goals, without becoming puppets in the hands of others' expectations or empty promises of instant gratification. Schopenhauer viewed life not as a gift of fate, but as a unique opportunity, the only one we have, to strive for something more than mere survival. He throws down the gauntlet, urging us to transcend the biological, to find a spark of meaning in the utter darkness of suffering. And though his view on love seems steeped in bitterness, it holds a valuable lesson. It's not about fleeing desire headlong, but about learning to live with it in a conscious dance. Schopenhauer paints a world where freedom blossoms from recognizing and mastering the will. It is not an escape from life, but a daring affirmation of existence unchained by the automatic reactions of our flesh. It is an invitation to a meaningful life, a call to summon the courage to defy conventions and build a life that is truly our own, not a pathetic shadow of impulse or desire. At the very core of Schopenhauer's philosophy lies a contemplation of human destiny and the possibility of finding a quiet harbor in the raging ocean of chaos. Accepting reality as it is, with all its pain and loss, this is the first step toward liberation from the oppressive tyranny of the will. True freedom awaits us in the awareness of our nature and the ability to steer our lives toward the beacon of what truly matters. Arthur Schopenhauer's philosophy, though colored by the grim hues of profound pessimism, offers us a disarmingly honest view of human nature and the world in which we struggle. Its cornerstone, the idea of the will, a blind and untamed force driving all forms of life, traps us in an endless cycle of desires and suffering. And while this thought may be disheartening, its power is undeniable. Schopenhauer ruthlessly tears away masks, forcing us to confront an unsightly truth. Our impulses are often no more than an echo of a biological imperative, blindly striving for procreation, regardless of the cost. But the philosopher does not merely content himself with stating human misery. He points the way out of this closed loop. Authentic freedom, according to Schopenhauer, is not the suppression of the will and desires, but the ability to recognize and tame these mighty forces, directing them consciously. He urges us to delve into the depths of our own selves, to question our most intimate emotions and impulses. Only through this painful self-knowledge can we learn to make decisions dictated not by blind biology, but by our own will. In a world where fleeting joys and empty distractions beckon from all sides, Schopenhauer hands us a compass, allowing us to navigate this chaos. He teaches that true happiness lies not in momentary gratification, but in striving for a higher purpose, in asserting a conscious life, and in humility before the fact that we are not masters of everything around us. Though his pronouncements on women may wound, and his diagnoses sound like a condemnation, Arthur Schopenhauer offers us something invaluable, a chance to gaze into the abyss of our own selves, to audaciously question the very essence of our existence. He reminds us, genuine transformation is born not on the surface, in the bustle of the external world, but in the stillness of our soul. As we delve into Schopenhauer's philosophy, we should not blindly accept his grim worldview, where the universe is merely an arena of pain and blind will. On the contrary, he urges us to face the truth, to see human nature unadorned, to comprehend the profound motives that drive us, and ultimately, to attain true freedom. Not the freedom of escaping reality, but freedom forged in the crucible of acceptance, understanding, and conscious management of our desires. For, as Schopenhauer brilliantly demonstrated, the most important journey is not a voyage through the world, but a pilgrimage deep within oneself. It is there, in the silence of the mind and the depths of self-knowledge, that the key to an authentic life and, finally, to liberation from the tyranny of the insatiable will lies.